talk about hierarchy of user stories, right? So in the Scrum guide, it's mentioned a lot about PBI, basically product backlog item. But let's talk about reality. Have you ever worked in your job and you hear everyone calling what's in your product backlog PBI? What are the most common thing have you noticed almost everyone calling items in the product backlog? User stories, right? Today's video, the goal is to cover what are some other items we find in the product backlog and also what are some different hierarchy you might see in your job around how stories are being delivered to the team. Welcome back to AISHA Scrum. I'm very happy to have you join my platform. From my current subscribers and my new subscribers, I welcome you all. And if you're interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to email us at admin@aishascrumtech.com. So now looking behind my video here, I created like a little steps of workflow that you might have seen, right? And some of you will be like, oh, Aisha, by the way, there's nothing like epic in the Scrum guide. There's nothing like all these specific unique steps of naming all this PBI. But the goal for this channel that leads to bring reality to all of you, right? I know there's a huge discrepancy when it comes to naming all of these items we might have seen in our backlog, or the hierarchy or the level of how big of a story is or how small of a story is. But my goal is just to bring some little reality into you all. So looking about the hierarchy of workflow I've listed behind me here, I have these steps written out. And these are based on the magnitude, right? How large and big of a story is. I know for some of you that are maybe that inexperienced or are very new to being a Scrum Master, you are new to the field, you always maybe find yourself around this part whereby the team will always have story where they are working on that, and maybe then the team members will now break the story to tasks and subtasks to deliver them in a sprint. But I went further to even describe what happened at the higher level. In this case, it's more like a portfolio management of how acts, maybe like a customer wanting, like for example, building a website, how will that big list of tasks can be broken down all the way at team level. So the first thing I have in my board is the OKR, which I think is one of the highest. And I know some of you be like, oh, Aisha, my job, we don't have OKR. My job, we don't even use OKR. So what are some things can I see differently with that? Sometimes you can see like your company, they might call this sometimes like a business initiative, or they can call this initiative, right? If they might not even be using OKR, where every quarter they will sit down and discuss what they want to accomplish in that quarter. And sometimes too, looking about this OKR, the objective itself can go on for years, maybe a year, 2 years. I know my job for like it's a year or two. And then the next thing that I've written here, which is the key R, which is the key results, the goal is those to be like delivered in quarter, right? Best practices, right? And those key results should be measurable, right? And something like achievable, and be given a date when they plan for that to be achieved. But for the most part, in my experience, what I've seen, that should be quarterly. But I know you might say, oh, that I don't see that. Well, I'm just going by my own experience, right? So that's the point about up there, about the OKR and the objective and all of that. So then the next thing I have here too is the theme, right? And sometimes people are like, oh, Aisha, my job, we start at theme. Yes, I know. I've also worked in a company in the past. We didn't have any OKRs. We started at theme, and those themes are seen as the big and the larger initiative we plan to deliver for the whole of that year period. And from that theme, we'll now further break those down to an epic. And epic, I just see epic as a larger story, right? Epic usually hopefully can take like a quarter, like and 3 months to deliver. But I've also seen people that will have epic like forever. Sometimes people will be like, oh, Aisha, we don't have epic in my job. We have future. So how is that different? To be honest, I don't think I've ever worked for a company that have the hierarchy the same. I work for different company, and all of those company have all of these hierarchies differently. So I'm just going by the ones that I've seen that's most common based on my own research and my own personal experience, right? So that's what Epic is all about. And I know too, if you think about it, you'll be like, oh, Jira also have that. Jira have Epic as the bigger product backlog item, right? And Jira too, which shows those, you hardly just see an Epic on its backlog on its own. It will always will be linked to a story, right? Jira actually, for the most part, you see you have an epic, then the epic will be broken down to a story. Because then the story is that's something that's small that can be completed within a sprint. And for the most part, the epic is something that can go on maybe for a quarter. Best practice should be at least 3 months, but no longer than that. And as you are delivering these stories, as all of those stories are completed, connected to this epic, then it meets the definition of done for that particular epic, right? But I know some also ADO, right? For example, they have both epic and future for the most part, right? Whereby you will see they call stories PBI, which is the product backlog item, right? But we all know that it's not only story that's product backlog item, right? Product backlog item can be anything in the product backlog, like defect stories, like enabler stories, spike stories, all of that cover for PBI. And that's exactly to what the Scrum guide used, right? PBI, which is the product backlog item. And then people will be like, okay, so where does all this other extra title come from, right? It comes from different level of experience from everyone and companies naming things differently. And also Jira. Jira also played a huge role in that also, because Jira have their own unique way of breaking down larger story, which they call epic. And from there on, they break down this larger story to now epic to story, right? And from there on, team can now choose to break down those story to tasks, and if they feel like they can also turn it to subtasks. So the question will be like, or as a Scrum Master, what should you know? For the most part, I know like you will see like product owners, they'll be around these higher level discussion meetings with stakeholders like leadership and all of that, where they are discussing those high level bigger story. And then based on the requirements and description in those bigger story, they will now determine what epic will be distributed to what team, right? And then usually the PO will now bring that to the team, right? But some of you, sometimes people are like, oh no, Aisha, I'm part of those discussion. Then that's good, right? But for the most part, you always see POs also even doing more higher level of participating in those discussions. Because at this level, which is where the team at, they are more focused on developing and delivering those stories. And as those are being delivered, it's also meeting this definition and criteria of done. Because for an epic to be done, all those stories need to be completed within it, right? But as you also grow further in your career, going from a senior Scrum Master and Agile coach, you will also find yourself also working at this level while you are supporting the Scrum Masters at this level, while ensuring that they're able to deliver that. Because as those stories being delivered, we are also meeting this goal. Then from there, we are also meeting our team. And if you have a quarterly OKR, then you are also hopefully also meeting those goals. And sometimes people be like, okay, why won't we just call everything PBI, right? Because that's what the Scrum Guide said. Why don't we just go by and calling all this hierarchy of workflow, all these different names? What's the point of it? To be honest, I think it's good that we have such thing in place. It just helps with grouping and coordination, right? Let's say we want to build a website where we want people to have a unique login. Either you want to log in by your Gmail, you want to log in with your social media account, or you want to log in with creating information on the site itself, like inputting manually all this information, or sometimes you're logging in by your telephone number, right? All of those different ways of logging in, it's related to one thing, right? Which is login. So therefore, instead of you just creating random stories like, build a story to log in by Facebook, building your information on the site itself, logging in by your telephone number, logging in by all of that, you can create all those stories because at story level, you can able to deliver that. But for us to group all of that, we can either create a future or epic, and that it's larger, right? Because that by us able to create different means of team logging in, then that will become the epic. And as those different things have been implemented by the team, then the future, the epic is done. Right? The people are like, okay, Aisha, why are you calling the future epic? Because I know some company, they don't even use epic. They call it future, then story and task. And I've also worked for a company that will use both, where they will have epic as larger item and the future is even smaller, things that are related that can be grouped to be delivered, right? So I see it as a way to group things that can help see things that are similar, that can coordinate to help deliver a future. And also too for release purposes, right? Because sometimes when it comes to releasing, we don't just release one single user story, right? We will always release like some kind of future. And this future, that's something that can be usable to the particular end user. You will hardly ever see a team that will just release one user story, right? So that's another part of the importance of us grouping related item and grouping story. It's been so loud here today, it's crazy. Yeah. So those are just different example of hierarchy of a workflow you might see in your job or you might experience in your job as a Scrum Master. And if I even made you more confused, it's not confusing. Just understand your own company, own policy of your hierarchy of breaking down story and ensure to you follow those best practices and you also coach your team the best practices related if you have anything set in place. And if you do not have anything set in place in your company, try to collaborate with other like-minded people and bring some kind of hierarchy of workflow in place because it helps with coordination and alignment between your whole company as you are all going through your transformation. If this content have been valuable to you, like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it all. And if you're interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to email me at admin@aishascrumtech.com. Thank you all for watching and see you all again in my next video.